Itachi Uchiha, the Sharingan, slaughtered his entire clan, held the fastest time ever in the Forest of Death, and had the second highest record in the written exams. Second only to Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash, the man who slaughtered the Third Great Shinobi War. Both Itachi and Minato are the two pillars that Naruto and Sasuke were compared to throughout the entire series. Constant comparisons such as, "Hey Naruto, can you create a jutsu that Minato couldn't? Hey Sasuke, do you have as much hate as Itachi yet? Hey Naruto, can you surpass Minato in Senjutsu?" and yada yada yada. I can go on forever. But what would truly happen if we actually swap the benchmarks we have set for our main duo? What would happen if Minato and Itachi swapped fights? Hey, what's good, y'all? It's Virtue, and yeah, essentially, the video is as it sounds. I will just be swapping their fights throughout the entire series. Now, for the forms of the characters, I will be using the forms except for KCM2 Minato, because, seriously, it would just be a stomp. So, yeah, Itachi, if he does have the Edo nerf on him, so will Minato, and he will be in his base unless he tries Sage Mode, which he doesn't actually really do within character for, for most of the series, and when he tries it in the war arc, he still notes it's kind of out of character. But for their alive bounce, it would just be unfair if Itachi was forced to fight in the state that he was in against Sasuke due to him intentionally killing himself and forcing his illness more there. So a normal, more healthy Itachi would just be relative to like an Edo Itachi or above, considering how Edo Itachi was suppressed and was so like that. So we will be accounting for that and whatnot, and the times at which that happened is also crucial, and I want to make it as equal as possible. For example, since Jonin and Minato fought A and B, I would just place Anbu Itachi in that place from the massacre, and if he failed then I would just put the Akatsuki alive Itachi in or whatever. Now, this video concept isn't actually my idea. My homie Thunder God already did this topic a while back, so his video is pretty well articulated and would definitely recommend checking that out. So yeah, shout out to him for the inspiration. And yeah, anyway, I've been yapping for a while. Let's jump straight into the video. So, the first matchup is kind of odd. It's actually Itachi's fight with Mukai Kohinata, and if you're more of a typical casual viewer, you more than likely do not even know this fight, but essentially, it's a fight that takes place in the first Itachi Shinden novel when Itachi and Shisui were kids, and a very experienced fighter of Konoha was leaking intel to the Mist Village for money for his family. Then Itachi and Shisui were sent just to monitor them on a mission. However, it turned into an all-out fight with Mukai beating Itachi and Shisui with the aid of his Byakugan, which did help him a lot with finding Itachi's location when Mukai was confronted. But then Mukai chose not to surrender as he knew the punishment's severity would just destabilize his entire family and would cause so much money in the loss. Fighting Itachi and Shisui, being able to keep up until Shisui eventually got the Genjutsu off and beat him, showing his low-key superiority over Itachi. And, I have a whole Shisui video, and he's pretty underrated, so go check that out. So, for this matchup, we'll just be placing Kid Minato in this matchup. However, it doesn't really matter, since Shisui is there to help him in the bout, and Shisui kind of won it in the first place. So, Kid Minato should definitely win here, and if it did come to a confrontation like this. And Itachi does have much better showings as a child than Minato does, especially at those younger ages. So, Itachi being like 8 or something in this encounter. So, if it came to a confrontation, maybe be troublesome for Minato, but Shisui should still get the Genjutsu off and Minato wins this match. But yeah, since there's not many kid variants of these two characters, I figured I would just throw this in there to see what y'all thought, I guess. Now, onto our first main fight, I guess, is Itachi against A and B in Minato's position. So yeah, this would be Itachi from his younger Anbu captain days during the massacre, more specifically putting A and B of the Cloud Village, who were Jonin at the time, which being a Jonin is not directly linked with ability, considering how many Jonin such as Ebisu specialize in attributes not directly relying on power. Same goes for being in the Anbu, so saying Itachi wins because he's an Anbu captain and they are not is kind of erroneous. So how did the original fight actually play out? Well, we can see that in the very beginning of chapter 542, it's noted that A and B have developed a wide reputation as for the A-B combo, quote unquote. So there is certainly a chance that Itachi could know their moves, or at least their reputation. Regardless, however, we know that Itachi should definitely be able to instantly make note of it, considering how he was able to decipher Pain's perception. It was a single glance whilst in Edo Tensei, and was able to counter the Kamui with a Madarasu. The only other characters being able to do such would be Pain. So considering just how linear, I guess, A and B are, Itachi should know at the very least that B is the eight-tailed Jinchuriki and A is a speedster. Although it's implied that B is not yet a perfect Jinchuriki, as we can see him training in the cave and whatnot, and the Jonin guards were implying that Gyuki was going to rampage whenever he was going to try to control him, I guess, some more. So here, B could definitely be caught in a Genjutsu, which could be game over for B, especially if it's something like Tsukiyomi, were to land, which, it most likely would, due to Itachi being overwhelmingly more powerful than A and B, who only virtually scale to a Jonin Minato, who only, again, scales just above them, unless, you subscribe to, like, the game continuity, then Jonin Minato goes a few different other places, like around Hiruzen and Jiraiya. Well, what do I mean with the second Itachi Shinden novel encounter, though? And, well, I'm talking about the rivalry between Obito. The masked man Itachi is highlighted much better during their interaction regarding how to deal with the Uchiha, in which Itachi proposed the idea that Obito would help kill the Uchiha, as, there is simply too many to kill on his own. Same goes for Obito, and Obito will finally get retribution as Madara in return, and Obito does not invade the Leaf Village in return. Itachi claims, if you refuse this offer, then you and I are enemies. To which Obito then claimed, could you kill me? Then briefly after that, Itachi said, it's not a matter of if I could or not. I will kill you. And then Obito remained silent, more than likely remembering the attack that Obito staged on the Daimyo a few years back, killing nearly every shinobi in that little unit, excluding Itachi. Yet Itachi and Obito acknowledge each other there, so pretty much this young Itachi is a rival to an older, more experienced Orange Mask Obito, even before the massacre, which would actually amplify Itachi beyond belief due to the Mangekyo tragedy-esque amps, which, in the Sakura novel, it's implied quite a bit that pretty much this guy named Kido, he wants to, kill Sakura in front of Sasuke, literally just because of the fact that it would just amp his Mangekyo beyond belief, pretty much. So, I guarantee Itachi killing literally his entire clan would definitely amp him quite a bit due to the Uchiha love connection to their ocular powers, which would mean Itachi is obviously above the Jonin Minato, who is blitzing A, who by this point only has V1 unlocked. As you can see, when Minato evaded him, it's noted that that was his top speed, and yet his hair was yet to flare, not to rhyme or anything, and how it does in V2. So neither A nor B here really scale to their later variants, and Itachi should deal with them rather quickly, and part to his many one-shot techniques Itachi has in possession right now, being of course the Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi. Although he doesn't really have the Susanoo, or at least from what we know, he doesn't have the Susanoo yet. So, if B happens to get a Biju Bomb off, then maybe. But outside of that, it's virtually over for the AB combo, and Itachi should win in Minato's place. On to our next Minato match. We are now into a more timeline-based battle. So for this battle, it's going to be against Hebi Sasuke. Minato will be in his Hokage alive form, being placed in Itachi's, hideout and his place within the hideout. Now, this is a very unfair matchup in Minato's favor, as when Itachi originally fought Sasuke, Itachi was merely trying to let Sasuke kill him to somewhat atone for his sins. Even Zetsu notes that during the fight, that Itachi is much different than how he typically fights, which supports this, considering that if Minato were to be placed in this situation, he doesn't really have any innate reason to hold back, and he would simply just beat Sasuke pretty bad and pretty hard due to a few reasons. Most prominent reason being the speed disparity, which it does indeed seem that I've talked about Hebi Sasuke's speed in almost every video, but regardless, we know that some still believe that this Sasuke could stand a chance or even beat Minato when using the scaling of something along the lines of like this, and it's like Hebi Sasuke is implied to be above MS Sasuke, who's able to fight on par with Killer B, who's above Jonin Minato, who isn't much different from Hokage Minato, and, well, no. Firstly, Killer B was not trying to kill Sasuke or anything, and that's emphasized profusely that the Sharingan was the only reason Sasuke is not dead, crediting the linear movement precognition as to why B did not kill him. Such as the beginning of the fight with the Seven Sword style when it came out. We noticed that, B is above this Sasuke in that encounter, and it's like kind of highlighted that the Sharingan was paneled quite profusely just to kind of show that the Sharingan is doing this linear reaction, and it's noted a little later. Now, For the Bee to Jonin Minato stuff, I've actually been saying this for a bit, but even if you believe that Bee perception blitz Minato's travel speed is consistently higher than his, reaction speed and combat speed and whatnot. So let's look at the feat, shall we? So we can see that Minato is pretty much behind A with the kunai, in which whilst Minato is hovering in the air, Bee pushes A out of the way, placing his own tentacle in the spot. Minato then slices through it, claiming, so does this mean, well, essentially, during the feat itself, Minato shows no sign of reaction, which people argue to imply that it was not displayed until after the fact, which, sure, but Minato's lack of reaction, he is quite a special case for this. And what do I mean? Well, again, this kind of corroborates my travel speed stuff, but when Minato is getting blitzed, he doesn't show those reaction indicators that many other people do. Even in his interaction when V1A tries to blitz him here, he doesn't show any reaction and still blitzes him, with some calcs being as high as 50 times here. So the other bit of this is that we are made aware that Minato has interacted with other Jinchuriki, namely being Han, Roshi, and Kushina, all of which do not have what B has. Now, what do I mean? Well, it's when B needs an extra limb, an actual Gyuki tentacle pops out, which is unique to him. So Minato still cut through the tentacle, but Minato could have just been in shock, possibly thinking that Gyuki had fully emerged. As like when Kushina taps into Kurama, she just rages, and you can see like the dark red like rage arms and stuff, not like an actual tentacle, not an actual octopus tentacle, or in that case a fox tentacle or arm or whatever, right? So when Minato, he could just be noting like the difference between them. So it's not really a speed thing. We don't really know what it's in reference to, so to kind of claim that is disingenuous, considering it is, again, unique to B, so he's probably just shocked that there's a whole ass tentacle in front of him. So, anyway, Hebi Sasuke doesn't scale to Hokage Minato, considering how Minato is able to completely blitz Yellow Mask Obito, who later is above much stronger variations of Sasuke, and many people tend to overlook Obito versus Minato in regards to speed, and just say they are equal. But however, this is simply not the case, as in the beginning, it's implied that Obito was holding back, more or less, gauging Minato's speed. This is displayed when Obito appears behind Minato on the rock, to which Minato reacts and swings his arm, and Obito catches it, attempting to suck Minato into calmly. Minato then uses FTG to escape, and Obito notes that he will get him next time, as soon as they touch. Then, Minato and Obito charge at the same speed, in which Minato slams their Rasengan into Obito. But let's rewind a little bit. Minato is able to blitz Obito so hard that he isn't even moving. The anime has a pretty good portrayal of this, and I'm not kidding. This is normal speed that I'm showing on screen, so it's definitely implied that Minato just wasn't going all out on the Masked Man prior to this. So, considering Minato would be a blitz level above this Sasuke, what can Sasuke really do to harm Minato? And I mean, he has a very potent fire style, but again, we know Minato's skills above B, who can cut Itachi's fire style in half, so Fireball wouldn't really work. The Chidori wouldn't be fast enough to hit him, so I mean, Minato's Flying Rising, Minato definitely beats Hebi Sasuke. Now, here is where another interesting thing is that once Sasuke is down and nearly out in this form, the Hydra Orochimaru emerges, which Hydra Oro is kind of busted. I mean this in the sense that the second he arose, the third data book calls him the largest and most powerful of all the snake summons, and implies that he's far exceeding base Orochimaru, kind of being above that Sannin-esque form, similar to how Jiraiya is in Sage mode, and whatever. So yeah, the Hydra is ridiculously crazy. So for those that were really wanting a dedicated section to when Itachi fought Orochimaru in the very beginning of his Akatsuki days, then Minato just slams, plain and simple, with the Hydra being much more comparable. Even once seeing the Totsuka blade, Oro was unaware of the sealing properties and was under the assumption that it couldn't even hurt him. So Hydra is crazy, but Minato should have many forms of sealing, and if we know that Minato is way faster and more than likely wouldn't get hit, so Minato would just find a way to beat this Hydra, whether that be sealing or whatnot. And some still believe that it's implied that Minato is a top tier sealing shinobi, and some believe that he's not, but he certainly is, as it's implied by both Kurama and Kushina. So saying he wouldn't have any sealing at all is certainly disingenuous. So yeah, Minato does beat Sasuke in his Hebi days and the Hydra, I'd say mid-diff. The next match is certainly one of the more interesting matches I've ever really had to talk about on my channel. Of course, being what if Minato was in Edo Itachi's position when he was forced to fight KCM1 Naruto along with Killer B. Now, for Minato's form, I will be giving him his normal Edo Tensei state, not the KCM variant, however, just a suppressed Edo base variant, as we know that Itachi was suppressed against Nagato, as shown when his Susanoo wasn't fully developed, and he only shot 3 Yasuka beads, and he held back the Sharingan, and yada yada yada. So pretty much, we'll just be giving Minato the efficiency command put in place by Kabuto to fight as they would. Now, this command is very, very misconstrued throughout the fandom, with many believing that there is a max power or something. But nah, the command is basically just for them to fight at a top efficiency level. A good example of this would be Itachi going only 3 Tomoe against KCM1 Naruto and Killer Bee. Reason being is because the Mangekyo takes more chakra, and Itachi was already pushing back KCM1 in his 3 Tomoe, so it would be at the highest effective level to simply stay in that 3 Tomoe state when, he needed to blitz Nagato later, he just went into the Mangekyo. So maybe that would allude to the idea that Sage Mode Minato could come out if need be. Just a little side note, as again, many people take the original command out of context. So the original fight starts off with Bee and Naruto, then Itachi got Kodo'd. So we're just going to do that for Minato as well, and then we're just going to see how Minato would stack up against Nagato. But first, how does Minato stack up to a War Arc Killer Bee and an early KCM1 Naruto? So how fast is Minato? As I'm sure, that's what you guys are thinking here, since there's only, a million statements talking about the KCM1 Naruto and Minato's speed relative. So let's hop straight into those statements. The first statement is Killer Bee stating that hit that's quite a smash, just like the Yellow Flash, which is in reference to Naruto blitzing Kisame without, being able to react to himself. Again, going back to what I was saying earlier. So, yeah, the statement says the Yellow Flash. Now, what does this mean? Well, I'm sure you've all heard the Yellow Flash refers to Jonin Minato, which is true. However, is there a real difference between Hokage Minato and Jonin Minato in speed? Well, sure. So we know that the Raikage A is able to keep up with KCM1 as stated in the 4th data book, which actually states it could overtake even Naruto in his tail beast chakra mode, and it boasts a godlike speed not inferior to the Yellow Flash. Which this actually implies many things, that are quite overlooked, honestly, in my opinion. So the first part claims that he's able to overtake KCM1 Naruto and isn't inferior to Jonin Minato. However, it claims that A possesses godlike speed, which is crucial, as this in the 4th data book, in Minato's 4th data book statements, actually says, quote, praised among all as the greatest in godlike speed. Hokage Minato is then above the Raikage, who is above that Jonin Minato tier, or at least not inferior to that Jonin Minato tier. And so, yeah, this isn't even contradicting, as we know that A himself states that no one alive is faster than him ever since the 4th Hokage died, which means that he is not inferior to Jonin Minato and was below Hokage Minato. So this means that Hokage Minato should be above that KCM1 level and somewhere under the very early KCM2 level, since Kurama kind of just states that outright. So this means that Hokage Minato should certainly be able to deal with KCM1 Naruto and Killer Bee in these instances, being able to at least parry them off until Kodo would actually hit Minato. Now, for Minato stacking up to Edo Nagato, well, this is extremely ambiguous, and at least in speed, for the speed portion, I guess. Reason being is that Nagato is low-key nearly a blitz level above that KCM1, and if I had to say where Minato lines up, I would say that he's somewhere under KCM2, so, he could still be in that blitz level above. We just don't know, since Minato has those higher levels of scaling. I'm just going to simply grant it to him. So, now, with him being relative in speed, with Minato having the objective that Itachi did, which is to seal Nagato and teach Naruto about teamwork, not just go all out and kill Nagato, but to teach Naruto about teamwork, how well does the 4th Hokage truly stack up? Well, Minato's primary arsenal being, rocking the FTG, he is certainly having that speed advantage. Now, I'm not going to get into whether the Flying Raijin abides by the speed equation or not. I'm just going to assert that Minato has relative or greater than speed assertions to this Nagato and has the Flying Raijin to assist him on top of that. So, I mean, Minato will have the advantage in speed more than likely, but for something like strength, Minato's Rasengan doesn't really hold much relevancy to this, as Nagato is obviously an Edo Tensei, and if Nagato was able to regenerate from the Amaterasu, which is said to be the strongest offensive attack, the Rasengan wouldn't, just slaughter Nagato or something like that, and it would more than likely require sealing, which sealing could certainly work. Granted, not as proficiently as the Totsuka blade, Nevertheless, still being able to get their job done, as it's implied that Minato has astounding combative Uzumaki tier ceiling, such as the Reaper Death, the Flying Raijin, 8 Sign, and the 5 Tetragram seals, all respectively. Minato more than likely could seal him if he got his hands on Nagato, which is certainly probable. Nagato always, he did try the Soul Extraction Jutsu on Naruto, or maybe the Ashura Cannon to try to blow Minato's head off. But either way, Minato would counter those. However, other abilities such as the Shinra Tensei and Shibaku Tensei, that is much more up for debate. Now, the 4 databooks states that the Shinra Tensei can push all things in creation, which would obviously include things such as, throwable kunai that Minato may try to deploy. And, if you were to try that, of course. And again, maybe the Rasengan if Minato were to try that as well. Which, could be in character. Maybe trying to gauge how strong Nagato would be or something. But regardless, I think Minato should understand that the longer the fight wages, the worse it gets due to how, Nagato's stamina works. So Minato would more than likely try to end this very quickly. Which leads me to lean on him like blitzing Nagato and seal him prior to getting the Chibaku Tensei or the Shinra Tensei off. But the Shinra Tensei shouldn't be much of a problem considering how the timer works, coupled with Minato's sheer speed with the Flying Raijin on top of his already great combat speed. It's probably game over. If you do subscribe to the Chibaku Tensei coming out, then you could give it to Nagato, but Minato could use the Guiding Thunder or teleport the core away. And I would pretty much agree that Minato would do very well parrying off Bee and Nagato, and then would just be able to subsequently deal with Nagato like mid to high diff. Now, onto the classic Obito and Itachi rivalry. The two Uchiha destined for extremely different roles in the shinobi world. But how would Itachi truly stack up if he was in Minato's position? Well, I actually think that he would do bad, yet good at the same time. And what do I mean? Well, to understand this, we need to also split the matchup into 2 parts similar to the last battle, with the first battle consisting of Itachi versus Kurama, testing how Itachi could deal with the Biju Bomb, his power, and then sealing Kurama. Then, the following rounds, subsequently discussing how Itachi would fare against Obito in the outskirts of the village by that shed. So, Itachi, for this, will be at his least sick alive self whilst in the Akatsuki days and whatnot. Itachi will be under the same pressure and objective as Minato was, being able to stop the Biju Bomb, seal Kurama, and then make Yellow Mask Obito retreat, the 17-year-old Obito, of course. So, how strong is Itachi? Well, let's get straight into that. What is Itachi's illness? Well, many have speculated on this in the past, some claiming it's stuff like tuberculosis, but the 2 most likely diseases being microscopic polyangiitis and then the human immunodeficiency virus, more commonly known as HIV. Now, both are very good explanations for Itachi, with MPA being a form of vasculitis that causes small blood cells to become very inflamed. Symptoms of this are weakness, aches in the muscles and bones, and skin and bumps on spots, which align with Itachi. However, for Itachi's power corresponding with his sickness, treatment for MPA is rather basic steroids and antibiotics, and it's said that Itachi's stamina could be the really only problem, and it wouldn't actually hold back his raw strength or movement speed. With even then, we know that Itachi intentionally got himself sick with his autoimmune disease, as whenever he was with Kisame in his fight with Sasuke, he kind of forced Itachi's true stamina to come out, and I mean, even then, the Susanoo held up until he dropped dead. So yeah, this would mean that a more normal Itachi should be very close to an Edo Itachi, due to the several statements claiming that Edo Itachi is actually, or that Edo Tensei are actually weaker than their alive selves. So, since we know that Itachi was suppressed and holding back whilst fighting KCM1 Naruto, it would be very disingenuous. So yeah, Itachi should be around there or above the MS Edo Itachi that was blitzing Edo Nagato and who was above that KCM1 level. So yeah, and again, as we mentioned about Minato and KCM1, I think they should at least be relative. Again, I will restate that this is being generous to Itachi, but again, you also have to know all the instances in which Itachi is implied to have been a caliber above Obito, and I'm not going to get into, complete all of them, just simply, I'll just pop those on screen, as I feel it's semi-tangential. So yeah, Minato and Itachi could be at least relative in speed, in my humble opinion, and then I think Itachi's destructive capacity is ridiculous, being able to destroy over 40% of the Chibaku Tensei if he wanted to. So, yeah, this Itachi is really crazy, but he will go blind if too many MS techniques are used. In the manga, Itachi actually does go blind. Many don't know this, with the colored manga even being incorrect on most sites. But you can see that against Orochimaru, his eyes were completely whited and faded out. The cataracts in his lens were completely impaired, preventing accumulation of protein along the eye lens, forcing only UV light rays to reflect. So yeah, in other words, Itachi was just blind. So yeah, even though he is relative to that Edo Itachi in some regards, stamina certainly isn't one of them. In which I think that both Minato and Itachi actually have great chakra reserves. However, it's just their vast moveset requires rich amounts of chakra, and if I'm being honest, Itachi has more of those moves, so his stamina will not be as good as Minato's, and Minato's is kind of just a step above, if I had to say so. So, yeah, with those being established, let's jump straight into the first part of the discussion. How does Itachi stack up against Kurama? Which, to put bluntly, not great, or at least, that's what I thought at first glance. I mean, what can Itachi do to the Bijou Bomb? Well, that's all on your interpretation to the Yadamir. So, the third data book has a few excerpts regarding the spirit weapon. One stating outright the Yadamir, a shield that can repel any attack. And the thing about this is it's actually contradicted by how the description to the function of the Yadamir actually is. So, and that's also in the third data book, and here it states, it's a spirit weapon with no physical form, with a power to change all of its properties, allowing it to alter its attributes in accordance to the attributes of the attack, rendering the attack ineffective. So this could certainly imply that rather than repelling said attack, it would just rather nullify it. With that, we know that the Yadamir can nullify anything, so even the Bijou Bomb should be nullified. However, if it's reflected, it gets a little more complicated. However, from what we know, the trajectory of the bomb is fired relatively straight, and since we could see Kurama's back is simply facing rural mountains, it is still may work, but I'll leave this up to you. Pretty much, if you think he can deal with it via Yadamir, then yes, Itachi wins, and if not, then he loses this pretty badly, considering his objective here is to just do something with the Bijou Bomb, or at least hold Kurama off until Hiruzen arrives. But yeah, the next part of the battle is against Obito. Now, Obito and Itachi have always been like pseudo-rivals, as I mentioned earlier, but how close is this fight really? Well, for being honest, Obito doesn't really have any relevant feats other than fighting Minato here. So let's just go straight into that. Now, I'm just going to rip the band-aid off and say straight up, Obito isn't actually that fast. Well, what do I mean? Well, their opening sequence begins with Obito trying to creep up on Minato, in which Minato rapidly turns around, swinging his kunai through Obito's head, with Obito's immaterial body gaining control, and then grabbing Minato's wrist once it's in line with his, and then attempts to convoy Minato in, which Minato then uses Flying Raijin to escape, and Obito notes his speed, saying that he will take him in even quicker next time, which implies that Minato was faster than he expected, which could lend credence to the Hokage Minato above that Jonin self, as I mentioned earlier. But I digress. It then resumes with Minato getting caught in the chains and then blitzing out. Then Minato monologues how it's all down to a split-second speed and who's faster in this final instance. And Minato absolutely destroys Obito, blitzing him to where Obito was a statue in the moment, which means that Minato was more than likely just gauging how the Kamui worked. Then once he knew it, he just blitzed him. So does Obito really scale to Minato? Well, sure, but only on a very low-end relative, and it's very taken out of context, typically. So, how does Itachi compare? Well, since we're being generous to Itachi and taking him at his less sick stage, we know that Itachi has been compared to older, more mature versions of Obito, such as in the novel that I mentioned earlier, where Itachi was like 8 and they acknowledged each other, and then later when discussing the coup d'etat plans, where Obito didn't even respond to the idea that Itachi would just murder him, rather just acknowledging each other as, formidable opponents and whatnot. Now, of course, contextually speaking, this could imply that Obito did believe Itachi could kill him, but simply acknowledging each other as opponents does not mean anything alone. So yeah, just do with that what you will. The next piece of evidence is Obito not invading the Leaf Village, even with this ambition to do so, simply because Itachi was alive and said he would kill him for it. So many people chop this up to Obito keeping his word, which is true, but it could also lend credence to the idea that Itachi was formidable enough for Obito not to want to chance the idea of invading. The next piece is Obito monologuing that if he knew more about Kamui than Itachi, he probably would have killed him, talking about the Amaterasu that hit Obito's shoulder. However, this doesn't really do much since we know that Obito can react to Raikage A, who reacts to Sasuke's Amaterasu. Now, you could say it was Kamui, and it was a large distance, which could be true, and Obito just couldn't react to the Amaterasu when it was that close, like actually in combat, but this is up to your interpretation. Following that is the Naruto Road to Ninja movie, which is said to be pretty much worked on by Kishimoto, and Obito pretty much says that Itachi, if he wanted to, he could even set Obito on fire, again poking at the idea that Itachi could kill Obito. The last bit, certainly not least, is from the games, and then Obito states that no opponent was worthy of Itachi, which obviously could imply that Itachi was above Obito. Now, let me ask you this. Would it be outlandish to say Itachi could kill Obito given their rivalry? No. So, could this Itachi really scale to that? Well, if you again use Edo feats, then yes, most certainly. I would argue that this case here becomes actually very consistent, with Minato being above Obito and Minato being on that Edo Itachi level as previously mentioned. So here is the problem. What can Itachi do against Obito? Some of his greatest assets, such as the Totsuka Blade, Amaterasu, Yasuke and even the Tsukiyomi, get countered by the Kamui, with the Tsukiyomi being probably the most questionable, for sure, and many people lean towards Obito being able to snap it easily since Hebi Sasuke did. However, people, for whatever reason, forget that Itachi sandbagged that whole fight and can control the Tsukiyomi as if it's real own reality universe. He can control the gravity, the time, the space. Therefore, the chakra injection times should also be altered, since Itachi's Tsukiyomi is equal to an EMS Sasuke's Genjutsu in the war arc. So you'd kind of have to argue the presupposition that EMS Sasuke's Genjutsu is equal to Hebi Sasuke's, which is just wrong, even whilst nerfed in the Edo Tensei. So, Obito probably couldn't counter Tsukiyomi and would pose quite a bit of a threat. Would it kill Obito? I doubt it. So what does all this mean? What am I getting at? Well, Itachi, luckily enough, doesn't need to kill Obito. Doesn't even need to really beat him. Only just needs to threaten him enough to retreat, similar to how Minato did. So since Obito didn't touch the leaf for over a decade due to Itachi, I would say that Itachi could take this and threaten Obito high diff. Then should just be able to seal Kurama with the Totsuka Blade like mid-diff. If you were also paying attention to how I laid this out and how the fight actually goes, you would know that when Obito first engages Itachi, the Susanoo is already up due to the Yadamir being required for the Bishu Bomb. So that means that Itachi would actually start off in the Susanoo. So yeah, I think he would definitely threaten Obito here, especially if Obito sees him reflect the Bishu Bomb and he's like, what? He's probably going to be quite shocked. So yeah, I'd probably give this to Itachi mid to high diff. Minato versus Sage Mode Kabuto. The most difficult fight in this list, if I'm being honest. For Minato's form, it would be giving the Edo Tensei state, giving him, of course, access to his Sage Mode if he were to choose to use that in battle, which is low, but granted, is still there. And yeah, we will talk about when the time comes. But for now, let's just establish the goal for Minato, which is to release the Edo Tensei from Kabuto's command. Minato will have Sasuke's aid in the battle, similar to how Itachi did, but like Itachi, Minato will be the main player, in which Minato is unfortunately not a good fit for this fight at all. What do I mean? Well, the main reason for this, other than how he would even be able to release the Genjutsu, is that Sage Kabuto's arsenal is just too much for Minato to really work with. Kabuto is actually quite interesting, and it's quite interesting just to talk about in general, and I haven't seen many really go in depth on him, but Kabuto is low-key a top tier at the very beginning portion of the war. Kabuto is capable of keeping up with Edo Itachi and EMS Sasuke, with there even being an argument that Kabuto was outperforming Sasuke consistently, which is really relevant, as it was straight after this where EMS Sasuke was pretty much relative to KCM 1.5 Naruto, or honestly above. And if you delve back into when Itachi fought Naruto, you can see that he was only his 3 Tomoe, and again, showing superiority to KCM 1 Naruto, to the point where he didn't even feel the need to operate with the MS, which is a blitz level difference, and whatnot. So him being KCM 1.5 level is low-key pretty consistent in regards to speed, which is again already on that level of Minato, if Minato's not really a little bit above that, with him scaling above KCM 1 and somewhere just short of KCM 2. And yeah, so Kabuto is arbitrarily relative to Edo Itachi in regards to strength, which is quite impressive, as we can see in a few instances where Itachi and Kabuto are clashing in Kenjutsu bouts and whatnot, as well as the fact that he is consistently overpowering Sasuke's fire style. And yeah, I know some could chop it up to an elemental advantage, but it's certainly worthy to note. Which Minato doesn't really mess with the attacks such as like all that much, and is more of a flying rising into Rasengan type fighter, which means that Minato won't really be able to work with those sort of AoE attacks or anything like that. However, Kabuto's case is not like the average, and it's not actually his physical stats that make him such a difficult opponent for Minato, but rather his abilities. Kabuto possesses all of the Sound 4 abilities, but amped beyond belief, like Taiyu's Sound Genjutsu, which is so amped to the point where it would actually require Tsukiyomi to break out of it, which is literally stated to be the strongest Genjutsu in the world in the third data book, which Minato does not have any Genjutsu capable of matching this, unless you argue that Minato has access to a Frog Song via Ma and Pa, if you were to use the Sage Mode, which is also stated a similar statement in the third data book as well. But when Minato went Sage Mode, it took him a few whole chapters to gather that Senjutsu. So, I mean, Minato can't really just do that here, and would get messed up pretty bad by the Genjutsu unless Sasuke breaks him out, or he manages just to get that Genjutsu off on Minato, which does leave him paralyzed instead of Minato. As well, of course, Kabuto has Kidomaru's arrows and webs and whatnot. Something that's really interesting is that Kabuto possesses an extremely amplified version of Karin's region, which has literally healed her spine that was just blasted out. Wait, pause. No, all jokes aside, this means that Minato's Rasengan or Kunai aren't actually going to be hurting Kabuto, and that he can't actually seal Kabuto, as that destroys the goal. But maybe Sasuke could do something, but being quite frank, not really. Kabuto is significantly faster than the Sasuke, being able to casually dodge the Susanoo arrow and attack being actually quite faster than Sasuke, as we can see in the 5 Kage Summit, that Danzo was able to react to Sasuke in several instances, blitz and blow the back out, pause, of the Susanoo, and even equal out Chidori MS Sasuke's speed, but is far slower than the Susanoo arrow, meaning that we have a basis that the arrow is actually moving faster than Sasuke is in combat. So yeah, as he outspeeds that, he would easily be able to work around Sasuke's combat speed if he really is going all out. And I haven't even discussed how Kabuto can manipulate the environment for perfect advantages with the inorganic animations. So yeah, Minato doesn't really do all that well against Kabuto, even if you gave Minato that higher KCM2 level speed, KCM2 Naruto, not KCM2 Minato level speed. It's inevitably fruitless, as he again has no way of completing the goal. So Minato just is stylistically disadvantaged. He's very disadvantageous position here, if I'm being quite honest. So yeah, I would say that Kabuto wins and does defeat Minato, like probably mid to high diff. I mean, Minato does have that speed. You could argue he has the strength, but it's just the abilities and the task at hand is just ridiculous for Minato to have to try to pull off. But what do you think? Do you think that Minato does well? Do you think that Itachi does well? Whatever side you believe, make sure to let me know in the comments below what your thoughts were. Maybe you think that Itachi slaughters Obito no diff, or maybe Minato should just one-shot Nagato GG with the kunai. Either way, let me know your opinions and maybe what video you want to see next. With that being said, this video, along with many of my other videos, took hours and hours of effort and research to come to an accurate conclusion, so it would be greatly appreciated if you guys could like the video. And if you happen to enjoy my content, maybe this isn't your first time seeing a video of mine, maybe consider subscribing, which when I hit 1K, I will be dropping an Itachi versus Pain special. So yeah, be ready for that, and as always, love you guys.